This is the Oakwyn Podcast, featuring Morgan Brown and Michael Yu.
Welcome to the Oakwyn Podcast. I'm your host, Michael Yu.
And I am the Podfather.
The Podfather. It's just the two of us.
Just the two of us, right? Just a couple of dudes chatting about stuff.
A couple of guys just scratching ourselves.
That's right. Drinking scotches. I've got a theoretical scotch right here. I'll Photoshop that in.
Yeah. What kind of scotch do you like?
I'm actually a bourbon guy myself.
Oh, you're a bourbon?
Yeah. I do. Yeah. I mean, I dabble in scotch, but bourbon for sure.
Right. Yeah. What do you have like a go-to kind of?
Yeah. 1792 is my favorite.
1792. Okay.
Yeah, super smooth.
Yeah. What makes the difference between a bourbon and a scotch or a whiskey? Like how does it?
I think a true scotch has to be
from Scotland.
Yeah,
right?
from Scotland. And a true bourbon has to actually be made in, I believe is it Tennessee or Kentucky?
Okay.
I think it's in Tennessee. Anyways, but I mean, you can make them anywhere, but that's generally where the best ones come
Is
from.
there any difference in the process or like, what is it?
Yeah, I think there's like, I'm no booze expert. I'm assuming the scotch, like you actually do have to like, it's the different barrels, right?
Mm-hmm.
Like the scotch always tastes like peat. So there's some burning of peat and mixing it in there, I'm assuming. So.
Yeah. Like I don't really like that peaty. Do you?
Kind of. I'm like a
smokiness.
I find with all like kind of liquids that I consume, like whether it's beer, whether it's even down to like I don't drink water. I drink like fizzy water. I just like to be taken to like flavor country, So like when it comes to scotch, I like that peat in there.
Okay. Yeah. I think like I've been to Kelowna. I've been to like wine tasting and stuff like that. And I tell you, I have the worst palate. Everything tastes the same. I was like, there's grape in that.
I know, that's my favorite quote is like going to wineries and then being like, what did you think of that one? And I'm like, it tastes like wine to me. And then they just move along and they talk to my wife because she can actually like,
she can knows the difference.
Well, she can't talk about wines like crazy wine people talk about wines, but she knows a lot more what she likes and what she doesn't.
Like, what are you super into? Like, what's your like, this is something you're into?
Like, as far as
like, is scotch or what you're into, or in terms of like a hobby, something that you're like, because I have some friends that are so into wines. They have like so many different types of wine. They talk about it all the time. But even like buy a wine magazine type of thing. Yeah.
I don't know. I feel like I've been fairly consistent over my past, maybe like 10 years. I'm like, I can, the one thing I can kind of talk all day about is pop music. Like because I got so deep into like producing pop music.
Music. Okay.
And I just think,
what about it? What is it specifically?
Well, I came from heavy metal, right? Where you think that that's so much more difficult to make than pop music, but it's actually, I like the idea of it being so simple. It sounds like it's so easy to make, so simple on the surface level, but it's actually incredibly difficult to make something that actually sounds simple, but is actually keeps people interested, right? Because anybody can make a stupid little pop beat, but is it going to keep people interested? Is it going to make people want to listen to it more than once, right? And that's actually incredibly difficult to do. It's incredibly difficult to write lyrics that are simple enough that anybody, even with the most rudimentary understanding of English, can understand, but then that people that are English first language, like that, it resonates with them. It resonates with the pop culture of the time. Like that's incredibly difficult to do. So I just think it's really interesting that there's that kind of mesh of things and that dichotomy between how easy it sounds and how hard it is to make. So that's what it is for me. Yeah.
Like are there certain types of everlasting like values or tenets with pop music? Like, does it always hit the same format? Like, what is the?
There is kind of a general format, but I would say the melody is kind of timeless, right? Whereas as we go through the different eras and timelines throughout history, like the thing that changes is the relevancy of lyrics, right?
Okay.
Like, so lyrics have changed a lot from 60s, 70s, 80s, 90s.
So have you written some pop music?
I have, but I'm not like, I'm more of a beat guy. Like I used to write I don't know. I started out in high school writing like poetry and then like emo, like acoustic guitar songs, which transitioned into me actually writing some pop stuff. But I've kind of, at some point, you got to like realize what you're good at and focus on that. And I'm not good at lyrics. Like when I listen to a song, I don't know, when you listen to a song, are you listening for lyrics?
Yeah, you listen to some lyrics and then some beat, you know. Yeah,
so I've found that I don't listen to lyrics. Like I can tell if they're really bad, but aside from that, I don't care. Like I'm just listening to the song itself, like the beat. And like I've had songs where I'm listening to them and I'm like, oh, that's such a good song. And my wife will listen and she'll be like, that's a terrible song. Like they're talking about like my lumps or whatever, my humps. Like I don't know that Black Eyed Peas song. And I'm like,
my lovely lady lumps.
Yeah, that's right. You know the one. Yes.
Yeah, I do.
And so I just don't listen for that. Right. Yeah. I don't know. What about you? What are you into? Like, what's your big thing?
You know, I like people that are passionate about things. You know, I'm obviously into like fantasy role playing.
There you go.
Yeah.
There you go.
So I'm into obviously Magic. There's a game that I like to play. It's called Magic the Gathering. It's a strategy card game. It's a cross between Dungeons and Dragons and chess. So yeah, it's a lot of it's fun for me. Like I've been playing it since I was a little kid.
Yeah.
And
I played it when I was a little kid.
Yeah, did you play it too? Yeah.
Grade 6, 7, I think was my big Magic years.
I never outgrew it. And in fact, I'm still the same guy.
That's awesome. What I've always wanted to ask you, in that sort of realm, you play Dungeons and Dragons, you play Magic. Have you ever LARPed?
I've never LARPed. I've watched that movie Role Models.
Yeah, that was an awesome
there was some
movie.
like LARPing in there. I've never done that.
You've never dressed up as a knight and gone to the park and hit people with sticks?
No. But like I go to comic conventions and I've traveled like far distances. I love taking road trips. So like my guy friends and I, we like to go on road trips to comic conventions.
Oh,
so
nice.
Well, like we actually drove, almost 2 full days. We drove from here to Arizona
That's
in
a
my
big trip.
car.
Wow.
So we crossed like the Western United States and we went all the way down.
That's an awesome trip.
Yeah,
though.
just
Wow.
like me and a couple, and it was so funny. It was like a spur of the moment thing. There was a convention coming up. I was like, hey, what are you guys doing this weekend? And they're like, not really much. And then I was like, looked at my calendar. I was like, I'm going to move some stuff around. Let's go. And we literally like hopped in the car on a Thursday and just drove south.
What was the convention called?
It was called the Magic Fest.
Of course, that makes a lot of sense. Actually.
It's called the Magic Fest, or they call it Grand Prix or Magic Fest. It's kind of like a big tournament, but at the same time, like, it's an open convention, so people do dress up in that. So I have like, I have a collection of photos of people that dress up, and so like it's little known fact, but something that we're both really into is podcasting.
Oh yes, that's
Good
right.
Segue.
Yes, the king of the segues, right?
I want to hear more about the podcasting because a lot of people are interested in podcasting, and we have people that are listening to a podcast right now, and so obviously you're basically mainly doing podcasting now.
I'm
so
the
like
Podfather.
You're the Podfather.
Right.
So like, what differentiates like and why should someone start a podcast in the first place?
Well, there's lots of reasons why you could start a podcast. I mean, if you're somebody who's just into Magic the Gathering, or if you're somebody who's just into Friends, or like, I mean, I actually met some people who I used to frequent a brewery with, who actually told me at some point that they have a podcast. And I was like, oh, what's your podcast? Cool. And they were like, oh, well, we just get really drunk and like watch Xena Warrior Princess. So it's like, that's kind of cool, but there's a market for that, right?
That's hilarious.
There's kind of like these different sects of podcasting. We have people that just do it to talk about something that they're really passionate about. Those are like hobbyist podcasters. And then you've got like business podcasters who are doing it to like kind of promote their business, either to get new business or to promote the culture within their business. So those are two kind of that's how I see the two main realms of why you would start a podcast. Right.
Right.
So yeah, obviously there's different, people always ask me like, oh, should I, I've had friends be like, should I get a producer on my pod? I want to start a podcast. Should I get a producer? And it's like, well, if you're just a hobbyist, you probably aren't going to see a return on that. So maybe not, but like, Yeah, it's not like, I mean, to just start one, it's not rocket science.
Yeah.
It doesn't take a ton of money to start. You need headphones, a microphone, and something to record on, right? And that's pretty much it.
Yeah. So let's say we're in the shoes of a hobbyist, and you know, because you're a bit of a gearhead, hey?
Yeah, you can tell that.
Like, so like I don't know if you guys are watching on video, but okay, so we're still outside of my house, but Brayden has set us up. Like, you know, he's got the mic stands, he's got the awesome microphones, he's got the cameras going, and it's all like, you know, it's a production. It's a production, and it's, you know, and we've noticed a huge difference in our business. But so let's say we're a hobbyist, and you know, I was a hobbyist. So like, what would be the starter kit? Like, what would be kind of like, let's say I'm just doing it on my own. What would be the starter kit?
Starter kit would be like I guess the easiest thing to do, I mean, you probably would want to have like a computer, like some sort of laptop, right? Even just a cheaper laptop, like a PC or an older MacBook or something like that, with a USB mic. So a USB mic, if anybody doesn't know, is just it's like these mics here, but these actually plug into, you know, like a big system and interface, and it takes a bunch of different microphones. But a USB mic, you can just plug straight into your computer, and that's all you need to get going. USB mic, headphones. I said headphones is always crucial, and then your computer, and that's all you need. Basically, that's the starter kit right there. And you can get like a Blue Yeti mic, or like a Shure MV7, or my two favorite USB mics. But like, you know, then you're looking at about $200 for the mic.
This is a Shure.
This is a Shure. Yeah, this is like the standard like radio station mic. This is an SM7B, right? Right. But then Shure kind of has recently, like last year, made a MV7, which is like an SM7, but it's USB mic.
Yeah, I'll tell you, the mic that Brayden brings over and we use is like smooth as silk.
This is the radio mic, right?
This is this is what I see like on the Rogan podcast and on all the good podcasts is this mic here that we're talking on right now. And I've noticed a huge difference. And I think one unforgivable sin it just depends on what the intention of the podcast is. If the intention of the podcast is to get listeners, which sometimes it's not, I asked Brayden to listen to, I had a podcast called the Michael U podcast. Yeah. And I didn't care about listeners. I cared about, like, do I like to podcast? Like, would I enjoy podcasting? Yeah. Yeah. And
I mean, you had your goal and you made your goal and you figured it out, right? And that's just as good as going for listeners.
Yeah.
Right?
And so and I just did it on my iPhone, right? And I just recorded on voice memo. I would have guests, and I would sit in a room, and I'd turn on my voice memo, and it'd say, okay, welcome to the Michael U podcast. And they're like, what mic? Like, where are we talking? And like, do we talk into the phone? And I was like, no, just talk.
There you go.
And, you know, obviously, you know, it's really leveled up since that, you know, and having that, but that beginner stage, I think. So what would like a beginner setup cost?
Well, if you're talking back to those microphones that I was mentioning, like a Yeti, like a Blue Yeti or an MV7, those are sitting around the like $250 to $350 range, but you don't have to get something like that. You can get a cheap USB microphone for like $100, under $100, like a Blue Snowball or something like that. It's not going to sound quite as good, but just to get you going, like $80 or something, and then a set of headphones for maybe $50, or even just use your you can just use your headphones that come with your phone, like your earpods or whatever. So it doesn't cost a lot of money to get into it if you just want to get in. And I suggest definitely doing exactly what you did, like get in and just try it out and see if you like it, because if you don't like it, you're not going to stick with it, right? So even if you don't want to spend anything, do what you did and grab your phone. You could have two people that you could even get a bit better quality and have two people with phones, and they're both recording into their phones. And then you just sync it up afterwards. I mean, then you're looking at like a little bit of editing software and stuff. But yeah, that's the simplest, cheapest way to get into it. Anywhere from free with your phones to $150 for, you know, a very basic setup. Right.
Yeah. And, you know, I think it's there's no such thing as perfection, and it just depends on what the intention is. Like our intention at the Oakwyn podcast is not to get the biggest group of people listening to it. It's about, providing value to our agents for the most part and to our industry. That's what it is. And it's like
company culture, right?
Company culture. Yep. It's a bit of a niche thing. So like for us, we don't look at like, views and stuff like that. It's not really for us about the quantity, it's about the quality. Although like we've actually, it's been weird because Brayden like will let us know like, hey, we've got a lot of listens.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, that's the thing is you can see, and podcasting isn't one of those things where you throw a podcast, like unless you're an influencer, you're not going to throw a podcast out there and get 10,000 listeners in the first month, right?
Yeah.
It's a long game, right?
Yeah.
You start, and I'm seeing this, and I'm still seeing this with all the podcasts, including your podcast, including Matt and Adam's, but the Vancouver Real Estate podcast that they started in 2016. It's still consistently climbing. It's this crazy thing where you don't even have to promote it. You just, it's word of mouth. Like if you promote it, obviously it's going to go faster, but it's word of mouth and you will see it consistently climb. But I see there's like something like 53% of podcasts on Apple Podcasts have one episode, right? Because people try it and they're like, I don't like this. And barely anybody listened to it. And I'm, it's a waste of time and I'm not going to do it anymore. Right. Which is fine. But like, you have to understand that it takes time to build a following, right?
So when should someone when and why should someone hire someone like you, Brayden, to like do to produce the podcast? Like,
I'd say just like you did, like try it out, see if it's something that you that you like doing, see if it's something that you feel comfortable doing, because you might you might be like, okay, yeah, I really like doing this, but then you listen back to yourself and you're like, I'm not that entertaining, like, so you might want to build up that voice and try a few test episodes and something like that. And then get to the point where, okay, maybe now it makes sense to hire a producer because I can actually hear now the difference between what my favorite podcast sounds like and what I sound like on my podcast. Right. So that's kind of the point there. I suggest people try it out and make sure they're going to kind of enjoy doing it, and then start thinking about a producer, assuming that they either have the money to pay a producer or that they think that it might bring in the money. So you might see an ROI on that, right? Because otherwise you're going to get, a year down the road and if you're not kind of balancing out what you're paying with what you're bringing in, you're going to look at it as a liability, right?
Right. Yeah. There's that no dollars and cents aspect to it, obviously, like revenues versus expenditures and how that kind of works out with the podcast, but also it's in our particular we encourage, like, and we've seen other brokerages start doing podcasts, which are really cool, and like, listening to those, and everyone has, you really get an insight to the brokerage and the culture of the brokerage through kind of a lot of their media, like podcasting is a social media, and I really encourage it. So you kind of get a window into what it's going to be like to work there in a sense, right? Yeah. And like kind of how it functions. I can just say on our side, like we've been super happy with having Brayden as our podcast producer, and like it's been like really great for our company in terms of letting people kind of get a taste test of what it's like to be at Oakwyn, and kind of our philosophies and kind of what we deem as important and stuff like that. And in many cases, it's really being a staple of our communication plan, which is a lot of fun. So it just depends, but I think it really boils down to like if you actually enjoy it. So a lot of people ask me, and I'm sure a lot of people ask you, Brayden, like, should I start a podcast? Like like how do you normally answer that?
Well, what's your goal? And it's almost the same thing that I would say at the first thing in a meeting of somebody who says, I want a podcast, I want to hire you. It's like, okay, let's back this up. Let's have a meeting. The first question is, what's your goal in the podcast? And then from there, you can figure out your target audience. And from there, you can figure out, what your content is going to look like and stuff like that. But that's the first question, is always, what do you want? What do you hope to achieve? What's your intention? What's your goal? And is that realistic? Do you think that you can do this with a podcast? Right. I think maybe it was intended, maybe it wasn't intended, but one of the kind of things that your podcast, the Oakwyn podcast, did was for me, I didn't really have a window into maybe I was in the real estate industry. I knew of you and Morgan. I think I was telling you, I had a meeting with you like years ago about one of your developments, but I didn't really know what your personality is like. Somebody might have see your signs and see that you own Oakwyn and all this stuff and have preconceptions of your personality, but they don't get that window into your personality, and they might not know what you're like as a person. Yeah. And that knowing what you're like as a person and what Morgan's like and how kind of, I don't know, like happy and casual you guys are, that might actually cause them to think, oh, maybe that is the kind of brokerage I want to be at. Right. And I think maybe it was intentional for you guys, but that's definitely one of the effects that I feel like even just listening to your podcast is like, this is a window into like the soul of the person who's podcasting, and that can help drive business towards your business. Right. Yeah.
I think that's really true. And, you do get more in this format, you do get less of a microwave picture of what someone is like. If you look at someone's Instagram feed, everyone looks like, looks great and everything's all fine. But then when you get to kind of tap in, I feel like in a podcast, you get to tap into someone's subconscious a little bit and like their real personality and kind of their way of expressing themselves and stuff like that. Pri is here.
Oh, hi, Pri.
Hey, we're just talking about podcasting. You want to join us on the podcast?
Maybe later.
This is my backyard still. My wife is...
And also your cat with that sweater on.
That's cat as well. My wife's 9 months pregnant. This is the last time we're podcasting before the baby comes. So, yeah.
Yeah.
I know. It's pretty crazy.
Exciting.
Yeah. It's pretty crazy.
How are you feeling?
That's great. You look great. You look happy great. Too. This is
yeah. So we're gonna be wrapping up in a little bit. Yeah. Pri just came out. We're gonna have lunch soon.
Oh boy.
Yeah. But I think just to wrap up about the podcast, I think from our perspective, it's been like if you've thought about doing a podcast, like, and the quality, I think for a business, it depends on your business, but the quality's got to be there. And if it's not there, sound quality and stuff like that, if the goal is to represent your company well, then, obviously you want that quality. And it isn't, it's not a short-term decision to do a podcast because we've invested lots of time and energy and efforts but it has reaped a great reward for us at our company in a sense of just attracting the right type of people too, because we're not for everybody.
That's a really good point. Going back to that point of like you get a window into your personality, that's actually probably helped you attract people that just the quality of people are people that actually you've gel with and that gel with your personality, right? And so you might, I'm guessing it's probably caused you to start, just like I was saying, the quality of people is probably better than it maybe would have been before. With
I feel like people, and people get to know you a little bit better, but they get to know the company a little bit better. Yeah. And I believe in everyone absorbs information differently. And the goal for the Oakwyn podcast is to educate, is to give people give people a better experience at their brokerage, a better experience as a realtor, as an entrepreneur, and just provide like really great information, tips, tricks, education on how they can better their businesses, how can they better themselves in a way that's kind of like fun and that you will enjoy listening to. So it's not like going to be like, it's not going to put you to sleep in a sense. So like, and if, that's kind of our goal. Like we don't, I think a lot of people are numbers obsessed, and for me, I'm more quality obsessed. Like, I listen to the podcasts, or when we listen back to the podcast, we're like, okay, how was the quality? Could we have done a little bit better here and there? Yeah. Like, the numbers will get better when the quality is good, right? And the content is good. And you're actually, I was like, oh, we missed a bunch of good stuff here. And but it's a lot of fun. And, what's really great is that we get to, go down this path together. And, if I would highly recommend, and this is a what do they call it? A plug?
A plug, yeah.
Why do they call it a plug?
I think
a plug is like that thing. It's like plugs in electricity. Like, why do they call it a plug?
probably goes back to the old TV days when you would
Plug
plug
something
in an ad kind of thing.
Oh, okay. You
right?
plug in an ad. Well, yeah.
I don't know. I'm guessing.
Promote. So I really would promote the Podfather Creative, to anyone that's listening. Even if you're in a brokerage, like I have no problem. Like if Brayden did another podcast for a brokerage, I would have no problem with it. I'm like, I just want the industry to be better.
Whew, that's good because I'm working on a couple. So.
Hey, I'm happy about that. And I'm happy when even when I go to a listing presentation and I'm not the best fit for somebody and someone else is, I'm happy that they use someone else that it was better for them. Like I have no
absolutely.
I don't believe in the
scarcity mindset.
Scarcity, there's more than enough for everyone. And you know what? If people want to, even if we've had other brokerages ask us, who did you use for your design? Your brand is something that we would love to be, and we tell them this is who we've used, and they go,
"It's Morgan Brown."
Yeah, get Morgan.
Yeah. Good luck.
Good luck. But everything is just that she's the secret, obviously. Annoying. She's not even here, but she's still the secret.
Her ghost is ever present.
Yeah, she's omnipresent. That's right. But I'm a huge believer in just just being transparent, and that's the way you improve, because if another brokerage is doing a podcast that's better, quote unquote better than your podcast, that's good, because you will then be able to improve your podcast.
Yeah.
And
set the bar higher.
Yeah, set the bar higher. I want to have other brokerages do this because it's good, better information, better for people to, better for people to perform at a higher level. So,
yep.
On that note, guys, that's a window into podcasting. Anything you want to add to that? The final note there, Brayden?
Final note would be, no, there's nothing I want to add to that. I think we covered it. We covered
it pretty well. Yeah. So, but Brayden, if they want to get in touch with you, what's the best way to do that?
You can email me at Brayden, Brayden at podfathercreative.com. You can check out my website, which is obviously podfathercreative.com. And pretty much any way, but don't send me a message on Instagram because I never check those. So
he's a podcaster. He's not an Instagram guy. He's He's in the shadows.
I am no Insta celebrity. I'll admit that.
Okay. Yeah. On that note, guys, thanks so much for listening to the Oakwyn podcast. If you've enjoyed this podcast, Brayden, please rate us 5 out of 5 on the podcast platform you're listening to it on.
And follow us on whatever platform.
Yeah. Follow us on Instagram and then Facebook at Oakwyn. But also, if you are interested in Oakwyn, if you are from another brokerage or you're getting started in the industry, you can feel free to go to our website at www.oakwyn.com/join and type into the message box pod 2021 and you get a free
mystery swag.
Oh yeah. Okay, until next time. Thanks, guys. See you later.